So here's the big root that's going to go on the shelf. This will be the shelf queen. And it came in all original condition, even has the OG early generation speed control. The speed control that I had in my original like that, I don't think it lasted a day before it fried. Anyway, bearings. We're going to put in some fast eddy bearings. So that's how the front hub turns with plastic bushings. And here I want to show you the play in the rear axles. That slop is because of the plastic bushings. So we'll come back later and I'll show you how the front wheels turn and how the play is gone in the back axle once the bearings are installed. So since I purchased the two big bosses that got this whole project rolling, I purchased this off eBay. I did a video about that, but I've also been purchasing parts as I've been finding them on the Facebook group for these vintage Kyosho monster trucks. So while I'm at it, while I'm changing the bearings, the pins, the hinge pins for the suspension arms, it's kind of hard to see, but they do have a little bit of surface rust on them. And in a parts lot that I bought recently, the seller had mentioned that the parts were new, unused, and I totally forgot. And when they came in, I was so impressed and super surprised. So I have here brand new, unused hinge pins. So while I'm installing the new bearing kit, I'm going to pull out those hinge pins that have a little bit of surface rust on them and put them aside for one of the running trucks so that the shelf queen will look super fresh. So now that the bumper has been removed, the front suspension arm hinge pins can be accessed and removed just that easy. So this truck obviously has had some run time because you can see the wear marks on there, but let's compare that with what I'm going to replace it with. Get that shrink wrap out of there. So as you can see, the pin on my right is unused. Let's take the bottom one out here and see what it looks like. So I'm going to need to get on there with some pliers. I really should be using the tripod. There we go. So this is also giving me easy access to my front hub to replace the bearings. So I am killing two birds with one stone here. I'm replacing the hinge pins. I'll wipe that clean with some simple green. And with the front hub accessible like that, I'll get in there and replace those bearings at the same time. So I'll come back in a minute and show you what those bushings look like. Alright, so first let's look at this hub. So the early kits came with white plastic hubs, and later on the hubs were black, possibly made out of a better plastic. So these kind of an ABS style of plastic, which was brittle and kind of fragile, and these almost always developed cracks around the outside, and people tried to glue them, put a tie wrap around them. So it's rare to find white hubs on it. Let me preface that by saying this is my first restoration, but I just remember back in the day, anybody else who had one of these Kyosho trucks, these hubs were often one of the first things that needed to be replaced. So that's why I'm going to say it's rare to find these white hubs in such good uncracked condition these days. So the Kyosho Big Brute was a basher for its time. It was an entry-level kit, and so to keep the cost down, entry-level kits came with plastic bushings, not ball bearings. So one of the upgrades that you would do almost straight away would be to get a set of bearings. So I did that too. I had to replace my speed control almost right away, and then I replaced my bearings, and then I replaced the shocks with some oil-filled shocks. So here's the front axle. We'll put one of these plastic bushings on here and give you an idea of how much play we've got in there. See that wobble? So that was slop, made for a loose, sloppy truck, slow. And then you replace that with your bearing. Much more gooder. So to get the bearing into the back of the hub, I'll put it on the axle and then install the axle into the hub. We'll put the other bearing on. Just press that into the hub, like so. Take my axle with the bearing already on it. Ta-da! Put the hub pin through the axle hole. Also, these pins are almost always bent, and that was because kids or overzealous adults who should have known better would over tighten the wheel and bend that pin. If you bend that pin, you're going to have a cracked hub. It's a nylon lock nut. Just snug it up and it will be fine. It won't come off. So center your pin and push the hub onto it, and you're done. Look at that. There's a lot of play there. I'm going to consult the manual and see if there was supposed to be a washer between the hub and the pin to take up some of that play. There's a washer on the back of the axle. I wonder if there's supposed to be a washer in between the pin and the hub. So I'm going to check that out before I go any further. So sure enough, page 21 or 20 of the manual shows that there's supposed to be a washer, two washers on the axle. One at the back when it goes in through the hub, and then one over the bearing, and then your pin. Interestingly, I did not have to hunt for washers. The previous owner of this truck had the other washers that were supposed to be between the pin and the hub, between the nut and the wheel. So in there, the washers were all there in between the nut and the wheel. So that's fantastic. I didn't have to go look for them. I knew that felt sloppy. It's still sloppy, but at least now it's reassembled according to the manual. All right, so the bearings are installed in the front hub. Fresh hinge pins installed. And now I will secure the top one in place with the screws. Just one screw that goes in the front bulkhead that holds it in like that. Shout out to my buddy Jeff. He watched these videos. He's not an RC guy at all. He mostly watches my content to find something to pick on. But he noticed that I was belly aching about the screws being too tight on one of the big bosses. And he's like, oh, dude, you know that there's a specific screwdriver for Japanese screws? I was like, no, tell me more. So lo and behold, yep, there is. And I ordered it off Amazon. And it has a bit of a different shape to the tip. And you see those serrations, they help keep the screwdriver bit into the head of the screw. So thanks to Jeff for that. It's going to make working on this kit a little bit easier. The other screws that hold the bottom pin in, they're all part of the bumper, you see. No, you don't see. Let me move the camera here. There you go. So your hinge pins are held in place with your bumper along the bottom, and one screw to hold the top pin in. Now I'll do the other side. All right, so moving towards the back of the truck, I'm going to replace the bearings in the hubs, and I'm also going to possibly replace the dog bones. So in that parts lot that I got from Jamie on Facebook came brand new, never used Kyosho, Big Brute, Big Boss, High Rider Corvette, Double Dare, dog bones. Now, I know that people are 3D printing these. I'm not a big fan of 3D printing stuff. It's okay if you need it to like put it on the shelf just so it's complete. But anyway, these are going to go in this truck. Whatever condition those ones in there are, they're going to come out. And if they're good enough, I'll put them in one of my runners. The other thing that's going to happen here is this this link here, this ball link. This is a replacement with, it looks like Dubro, and I'm going to replace it with an actual Kyosho one using this size ball cup. So Kyosho had these ones in the beginning, and then later on they upgraded probably to a different kind of plastic that was a bit more durable, and they changed the shape. They actually have Kyosho printed on them. They have 8 or 5.8 mil printed on them. So I'm gonna go with this original one because this is an early generation truck. Again, you can tell that by the white hubs, by these ball cups. So this is coming off of there because it's not factory original, and I'll replace it with some of the extras that I have from my two Big Boss trucks. So the other thing I'm going to do is replace the bearings in the gearbox. So I'm going to remove the gearbox by disassembling as little as possible. All right. So I'll take the shocks off. I'll take that screw out. I'll take these screws out. And these parts have a little bit of surface rust, so I'm going to spray them down with some Balisol and a Scotch-Brite to just polish off that surface rust, clean them up a little bit, replace the bearings in the gearbox, replace the bearings in the hubs, replace the dog bones, and replace the hinge pins. Come back when something interesting happens. All right. I took out just the screws needed to get the gearbox off of the chassis. And so now I can replace all the bearings in this part of the truck. And I left the shocks and shock tower on. I left those back braces on. And I did discover something unfortunate. The screws that go into this brace, it braces the gearbox to the chassis, and it also holds the bottom A-arm, rear suspension arm hinge pin in place. So what I discovered was, unfortunately, on both sides, the top screw hole, so this link goes on here like this, the screw that goes into here on both sides was stripped. So long screw goes in the top to hold that piece of metal with that ball stud on. But on both sides, this screw hole, unfortunately, is stripped. As a matter of fact, this one was so bad, I simply put the screwdriver onto the, a pair of needle nose pliers onto the head of the screw and just pulled it straight out. There's nothing left inside that hole to hold threads. So that would be a real problem if I was going to run the truck. But since it's going to sit on a shelf, it's not really the end of the world because the truck's not going to fall apart sitting on a shelf. But it's nevertheless unfortunate. I might see if I can do something about it. But in the meantime, I'm going to get some parts cleaned and bearings replaced and swap out these two Dubro ball. Oh, geez, even the... he must have lost that piece altogether because there's the original tie rod. And that one is a turnbuckle. It's got a nut on it so that you can adjust the length of it, the whole thing. So I had dug out some original Kyosho ball cups, but now I'll have to get the tie rod as well. Push rod, whatever you want to call it. I do have some spares, so lucky for that. All right, let's get this thing tore apart and cleaned up. So here are the dog bones that came out of the truck, and as you can see, you know, they do have some wear on them. They're super clean though. It's not like the Big Bosses I took apart that were just never clean. So they have some wear, but it's pretty minimal. When these are really worn, wait for that to focus. There we go. The cross pieces here, they go right to a point. They get extremely worn. But now let's compare them to a brand new one. So as you can see, the one on my left, is this one, has started to wear to a point on the cross pieces. I mean, the one in my right hand still has all the factory flashing from when it came out of the mold. So it has some wear, but it's still got lots of life left on it. Regardless, fresh dog bones are going to go into the truck. And we'll see when I crack open the gearbox, maybe new gears as well. I've got probably enough brand new gears to do three gearboxes. So again, since it's going to sit on a shelf, I don't know. I also want it to be the most valuable Big Brute in my collection, so maybe I will put in brand new gears. It all depends what I find when I open it up. Monster trucks, I have these brand new unused axles and outdrives, so I will be replacing the ones on this truck with those parts. There's some wear here, and I talked about how these parts get worn in, I believe, part 1 when I was disassembling the 2 big bosses. So perfectly fine for a runner, but I'm restoring a Shelf Queen, so I want fancy pants, nice new clean parts. So those are going too. A bag here of new goodness that I might dip into. But for now, we're going to continue cracking on by cracking open this gearbox and finding out what horrors await us in there. This is the Kyosho Le Mans stock 05 motor that comes in the kit. It's original to the truck, so it's definitely going to stay in there. You can't see it on camera, but I had to peek inside a little bit through the vent here. Of course, it's definitely been run. I got in there with the air compressor and blew out whatever dust was in there, so that's good. I'm not sure that these are in the right location. I believe it's supposed to go in the back, and I can see that at one time there was a ball stud screwed into the back hole. I'm going to check the manual. Maybe he ripped one out, so he changed them both to the back hole. Not sure why it's not in the back hole, but it's been in there both times, or it's been in both locations, I should say. So I'll restore that as to the kit. This one also is not... Oh yeah, it's the same. It's the same as the ones currently on the truck. They just have a little bit of a step on them here. And the other ones that I have do not have that step. So it looks like maybe they've replaced these ball cups, or had a couple of different versions of them along the way. But anyway, this one for sure is gone, because this is not even close to being original. So that's coming off there, and I'll completely replace this one altogether with Kyosho stuff. All right, time to crack open that gearbox. All right, we're ready to crack open the gearbox. I've removed all of the screws. I'm ready to open it up, but before I do, I want to show something that I've pointed out before on these old plastics. This ABS plastic, super easy to over tighten and then crack. So there's a crack here from where this screw was over tightened, but the worst of it is on this side. Look at this dent here. Like, the plastic has been pushed in from the motor screws being over tightened. You can see the outline of the washer in both of these screw holes where the motor screws go. So they really cranked those down when they tightened up the motor on this gearbox. Here we go. Wow. Almost bone dry and super clean. We can see here some guck that's in here. Let me get a Q-tip. So some leftover old grease with some dirt on it, but man, not bad. Not bad at all. The would that be the idler gear that the pinion goes on? I'm not sure. I can't remember. That one's the only one that has a metal bushing. The rest are all plastic bushings as well. So I was actually just going to throw brand new gears in because I have them. Got a bag full of brand new gears. So rather than cleaning, I was just going to say the heck with it and put all brand new gears in this gearbox. You know, and I probably still will. What the hey? Because these do need to be cleaned. So rather than clean them now, wow, it's bone dry, but no wear. Wonderful. Yeah, even though they need a little bit of cleaning, I'm not even going to bother cleaning them. I'm going to wipe out the gearbox with the Q-tip and put in brand new gears with bearings, brand new out drives, and just carry on. All right, well, here's the gears, all out of the gearbox. And this is interesting. That appears to be a tooth off of a white idler gear. It's hard. It was found in the gearbox, embedded in the grease. And it really looks, it has the size and shape of part of a tooth off one of these gears. So at some point, maybe this gearbox had been opened up and a idler gear replaced, because that is a hard piece of white plastic that's been yellowed from grease and age, but it really has the size and shape of a tooth off a gear. So when they replaced the gear, they really didn't do a good job cleaning out the gearbox because they left that behind. That could have caused some havoc. So now I'm going to clean this gearbox and reassemble with fresh gears and fresh bearings. So it's time to reassemble the gearbox. I cleaned it out using Dawn Power Wash, which is so good at degreasing parts. It's almost like cheating. So the grease that I'm using is from a company out of Quebec called Crown RC. I think they're gone now. I got some of their containers of grease off a prize table at a race one time. So I'm trying this stuff. Kind of looks like caramel. And I don't go nuts with the grease. I know a little better than I did when I was a kid. So just a couple of dabs here and there and let it work its way through. Because too much grease is going to create drag. If you get dirt into the gearbox, it's only going to serve to hold the dirt in the gearbox. So I don't go all cray-cray and over grease things like I did when I was a kid. So just showing you here, I'm applying just enough to get the grease worked through the gears, the teeth. I've installed the bearings. That bearing doesn't go in very well. It's quite loose. But that's the bearing that came in the kit to replace that bushing. So, yeah, see, it actually, you didn't see that on camera, but it actually fell off. Let's see if it went back in. Oh, it's still down there on the shaft, see? There we go. And then on the back side of the idler gear, yeah, this being the spur, I guess, this being the idler gear, there's a bushing that goes into the gear and then the bearing goes into that. So let's just turn these, get that grease worked around. That's good. And, oh yeah, I put some on the side for the pinion gear. I didn't need to do that. That was not smart. Wipe that out of there. All right, and put the other half on. Oops, can't do that exactly, but there. That would not have gone together so well. And grease all over the outside. Wonderful. Line up that out drive with the, there we go. All right, so cleaned, greased, reassembled. I got to wipe all that grease off because I'm a slob. And then I'm going to consult the manual, make sure I get all the right length screws into the right holes. Avoid doing any more of this cracking. Don't have to, it doesn't have to be airtight, watertight. It's never going in the water. So I'll check the manual, get the right screws in the right holes. That's what she said. And put it back together. All right, so here's where we're at now. I have reinstalled the gearbox and almost completely attached it. I've left out these screws here because when disassembling, I noticed that one of them wasn't biting in at all. And I think the reason is the screws are too short. You can use an M3 by 12 in the bottom. But looking at the manual, it looks like M3 by 16 is what's supposed to be in the top. So I found a mistake there. That needs to be corrected. Hopefully they're not stripped out. In the back here, these pillow balls were in the wrong location. So I've put them in the correct location, which means now I have to revisit these links, check the manual, and using a set of digital calipers ensure that they are the correct length. So I'll look that number up. I think it's 39 millimeters. I don't remember. I got to go back and look. And then I've got to build another one of these for the front link that'll go from the chassis to the rear hub. So that's what is next. I got these cleaned up. They had some rust on them. I just took a little bit of steel wool and WD-40 and rubbed it over them and got rid of the surface rust. The gearbox is reassembled with fresh gears, fresh grease, and brand new bearings, and it feels horrific. Oh my god, I can't believe how bad these things are. I guess I'm just, you know, I'm now spoiled by building racing kits with modern plastics and bearings and tolerances that aren't to the scale of a barn door. So anyway, it is what it is. I'm still enjoying bringing this back. I probably have mentioned a million times that the Kyosho Big Brute was my first hobby grade kit back in, I want to say 1989. And I built it myself when I was like 13, 14 years old. I don't remember exactly. And I don't know how I did it because I'm looking at this manual, and this manual is pretty painful to get through, but that's what they were back then. So anyway, back to work. I'm going to get the rest of this squared away, figure out that screw hole there with the right screw, and we'll check back when I've got it all back together. All right, progress report here. So these rods, they were a bit of a hot mess. This pillow ball was in this hole instead of this hole. So I relocated the pillow balls on both the rear hubs to where it's supposed to be according to the manual. And then I looked up the numbers, the measurements for the rear link and the front link. And the manual actually has them backwards. According to the manual, this link in the back is supposed to be 55 millimeters. And this link is supposed to be 39 millimeters. So it's actually a misprint in the manual. It's kind of interesting. So obviously it didn't make any sense. So I just made this one 39 and this one 55. And Robert is your father's brother. Everything worked out and everything is in place the way it's supposed to be. And these screws. So when I was disassembling the truck, I felt like this screw was stripped. And it wasn't that it was stripped. It was a 12 millimeter in that hole when it's supposed to be a 16 in this hole and in this hole. The manual tells you to temporarily install this B2 and B3 brace with M3 by 12 screws and then replace this screw with an M3 by 16 when you install this pillow ball mount. So the original builder of this truck must not have read the manual close enough and did not replace this screw with a 16 millimeter. I did. So 16, 16, 12, everything is together and fitting correctly and holding in place. Next, I'll reinstall the motor and cage for the gearbox. Well, there it is, done for now. I've replaced several parts and installed a bearing kit. And check that out. That is the original servo, the original Kyosho battery. Wow. Pretty awful. But there it is. There it is, working with the original mechanical speed control. I think I should take it upstairs and chase the cats. Until next time, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.